Welcome. This is the Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing podcast. This is where you'll learn strategies to help you achieve lifetime financial freedom through real estate investment. Your host, Rod Khleif, has owned over 2,000 homes and apartments, and he brings experts in all aspects of real estate investment and management onto the show. Now, here's your host, Rod Khleif.
Couple of quick things. We're now over 1.2 million downloads for this podcast, and I'm just blown away by that every time I look at the numbers. And every day I get a nice email or two or a handwritten thank you card from one of you guys. I've got this board on my house where I put those cards, and all I can say is thank you, sincerely thank you. I've spoken with, or communicated with close to 1,000 of you, and adding value to you has honestly made me reconsider my mission and purpose in life. And, many of you ask me for coaching or mentoring or to create a course or some training materials. And I never started this podcast with the intent to do that. But I've gotten so much pleasure out of those conversations and the gratitude I've gotten from so many of you. I finally decided to go ahead and do it. So in a few weeks, I'm launching really an incredible course and coaching program. I want to help you guys crush it in your lives, in your personal lives, and in your business, and help you build, your own lifetime cash flow as fast as possible. So if you want to get some more information on that course and the coaching when it comes available, just text the word CRUSH to 41411. And don't forget, my free book is still free. I've been so busy creating the course, I haven't had time to finish getting it published, and I'm real close to finally getting it on Amazon. And every review I've gotten on that book has been really, really good. So if you haven't gotten your free copy, make sure you do. You can go to rodkhleif.com, or you can just text ROD to 41411. Again, that's Rod to 41411. All right, let's get to it. Welcome to another edition of How to Build Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. I'm Rod Khleif, and I am thrilled you're here. We're going to really have a good time with the gentleman we're interviewing today. His name is Andrew Cushman, and he has purchased over 1,500 properties already. He likes the southeast of the United States, Georgia, Florida, the Carolinas, and I think they even have a property in Texas. And $45 million portfolio. Very impressive guy, very nice guy, and glad to have you on the show today, buddy.
Oh, thanks, Rod. Good to be with you.
Absolutely. So tell us, the normal way we get going on these things is to have our guests tell us, how they got started, why they got into real estate, why they love it, and just give us a little progression, because most of the people listening haven't got 1,500 units. They may have a handful, or they may not even have any yet, but you started the same place. So tell them where you started and how you got going.
Sure. Well, I started as a little kid playing Monopoly a whole lot with my grandfather.
Awesome.
And that turned out to be more predictive than I realized.
That's awesome.
It teaches you good lessons. Turn the little greenhouses into big red hotels, right? Or apartments.
Right.
But yeah, my first business was actually with him also. When I was 5 years old, we'd go collect golf balls around the golf course and then clean them up. And I'd sit there with my red wagon and sell them back to the guys who just lost them at a premium, right? And
nice.
So that kind of started the mentality. So through high school and college, I was mowing lawns and raking leaves and painting fences and doing all that. And so in high school, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur and have my own business, but I candidly had no idea what that looked like. So I figured, all right, well, what can I do that'll be a good job until I figure it out? So I went and got a chemical engineering degree, graduated college, worked for a large food company as a chemical engineer, your typical, 7:30 to 5 job, and
right.
Did that for 7.5 years. And along the way, met my wife, who was a similar mentality. So once we got married, for a couple of years, we tried all kinds of crazy stuff for businesses. We looked into vending. She sold stuff online. One weekend, we just made a mess of our condo that we lived in and, made all these flavored popcorns, and some of which were actually really good. But what we figured out is
That's awesome.
Hey, we had fun, right?
That's awesome, especially that you got to do it with your wife and you got excited and you're planning, you're figuring out how to build a dream and you got your goals aligned. That's awesome.
Oh, and
please continue. Yeah.
It was a huge factor. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what we figured out was all these businesses that we were attempting were kind of really job replacement type things, right? I mean, we'd work, we'd make some money, but it wasn't going to be financial independence and it really wouldn't be long lasting.
Right.
And a couple of years in, I guess it was 2006, we read an article about how to buy and fix and resell pre-foreclosures. And so we started looking into that. And then it was early 2007, we actually got our first one.
Okay. Right at the start of the crash. I mean, right. I mean, that was the year. Wow.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was. I'm telling you, I'll get to that in just a second. So we bought it and we fixed it up and resold it and made as much as I made all year at my job. So
Nice.
so I said, okay, this is it. There's no better opportunity.
One flip. You made as much as you made all year. Okay. Well,
Exactly.
that's a clue. Okay.
Yeah, we're in our 20s. We don't have kids yet. If there's no better time than now, right?
Right.
And so I quit my job and started flipping full time. The next deal came in September of 2007, right as everything locked up.
Right.
I still flipped it for a profit, much smaller this time. But what happened is when we started during the crash, everyone else was running away like crazy. So we had no competition.
Yeah, like me.
So
right.
What we did is we were buying for 50 cents on the dollar, fixing them up and reselling for 80. So even in the worst of the crash, we'd have our houses under contract within 10 days.
So you must have been in the lower price range. What price range were you selling in?
No, we were in Southern California. Our average resale was probably $375 to $400.
Wow. Okay. Wow. That's really astounding. Here in Florida, it just seemed like nothing was selling, and maybe that's all I remember because that's what I was living. But very interesting. So you were still selling properties at a discount and were able to sell them. I mean, that's awesome, and thank God, because a lot of people got caught and the music stopped and there weren't any chairs left. So,
well, and that's so 2008 was a good year. 2009 was fantastic, and in early 2010, my wife and I said, "Well, geez, this has been a great run, but it's not going to last forever, right? It's bottoming out. Competition's coming back in. What's going to be the next big thing?" And we said, "Well, all these people are getting foreclosed on. They're not going to be buying houses anytime soon. We're probably going to start a growth cycle. So it makes sense that probably apartments are going to do well." So we looked into that, went and found a mentor, and then in 2011 bought our first apartment complex. Was 92 units in Georgia on the other side of the country, 75% vacant.
So you were still in Southern California?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Still.
Now, wait a minute. You said it was 75% vacant?
Yes, it was. And
we're going to dig into that deal. Okay, so 92 units let's start from the beginning. How'd you find it?
What we did is I picked some markets that long-term we thought would be good markets to be in.
Okay.
And just started looking and said, okay, what brokers have the most listings in those markets?
Right.
And we used LoopNet to do that.
Of course.
And then just started calling those brokers and talking to them. And in the beginning, they'll send you whatever's hanging around. But after you call them back, say, hey, thanks for sending this, but here's why I don't like it. What else do you have? And eventually you'll start getting the better deals. And that's
guys, I want to flag that. I want to flag what he just said. In fact, I write about it in my book. I talk about it in my course. You've got to nurture those broker relationships. Most of the people that have brokers send them deals, they go into a black hole. They never hear from these people they've sent deals to. So if you're the person that calls them back and says, hey, this deal didn't work because of X, please keep sending me deals, you're going to be the anomaly, and they're going to respect that, and you're going to build relationships that will make you a lot of money. So you got this deal from a broker?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. All right. So what I want to hear is how the hell you financed a 75% vacant property, and how come you weren't terrified with a property that was that vacant being your first big purchase? So please explain all that.
Well, I never said I wasn't terrified.
Well, all right. How you got past how you pushed through that adversity.
Yeah. So, I'll start at the end and say, we bought that for $699,000. We actually just sold it about a year ago for $1.75 million.
Okay.
So in the end, it did work out and it did turn out profitable, and us and our investors all did well. But that was one of the biggest seminars of my entire life, was buying that property. And
thank you for using that term. I use that a lot on the podcast.
Yeah. And I mean, without it, we wouldn't be here. But, I definitely would not recommend anyone do that kind of property as your first deal.
Okay.
But how we financed it is you
paid $7,500 a unit. So
yeah,
I mean, it's okay. That says a lot right there. Just obviously that's just such an incredible price for a 92 unit. You could probably pull investors together to pay cash. Is that what you did?
That's exactly what we did.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's a down payment on in fact, not even on a 92 unit today. It's not even probably quite enough.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's awesome. So you paid cash, but obviously you needed more because I'm assuming it needed a lot of renovation. Is that an accurate statement?
Oh yeah, definitely. I
Okay.
mean, there were doors just hanging wide open, and copper was gone in some of the units. So yeah, the renovation budget was probably close to the purchase price.
Wow. Okay. So how'd you tackle this thing? Did you know you're in California, this property's in Georgia, it's a big project. How did you structure the renovation? How did you facilitate it? How did you manage it? You know, did you use a property management company? Did you do it yourself? Talk about that a little bit.
All of our properties, we use third-party professional management.
Okay.
And part of that is third-party property management might not care as much as me, but that doesn't mean they're not as effective as me, correct? Right. So they have existing relationships with vendors. They know who to talk to at the city. They just have economies of scale. So what I found it's very effective to hire a really good property manager and then manage them very closely and very tightly and very well. Okay. So yeah, brought in third-party property management. And then for the renovation, there was number one, it was a big renovation, but number two, we had vandalism concerns. So
ongoing vandalism.
Oh,
obviously.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, when you've got empty property, the copper disappears. I've had it happen in Memphis numerous times, and you'd rather just tape a $100 bill to the wall and let them take the $100 bill and not take the copper because it's so expensive to replace. But so how'd you mitigate all that?
We hired a guy who previously had owned his own general contracting company and had decided he kind of wanted to get out of that. So we hired him as a W-2 employee to live on site and run the renovations. So
run off the riffraff.
Exactly. So it was a dual purpose. So our actual employee, not just a random GC, was running the renovation and helping to keep off the riffraff. And so that made it feasible to manage it from the other side of the country.
Perfect. That's a brilliant strategy, and that's a great way to handle it. I mean, I've heard where if you've got a problem like that with vandalism or even worse with crime in tougher markets or tougher areas, you know, we've even offered police officers to have a little substation in one of the units for a while, you know, so the cop cars parked there all the time. You did that too? No kidding. Yeah. See, that really makes a big difference. Well, good for you. So you sold it, you made a nice profit, or maybe you didn't make quite a bit of profit. If you had 1.4 in it, you sold it for 1.7.
Yeah. So that was one of our lowest profit deals.
Okay.
Again, unfortunately it was profitable.
Well, thank God.
But being the first one, and there were a lot of seminars involved in that one.
Talk about some of them so that, you know, we can flag some of these things for other people that may take on a renovation project, maybe not as big as this one, but what are some of the things that happened, some of the places you got your nose bloodied, and what were some of the takeaways that you might be able to add value?
Definitely. One of them was despite going into it, we still underestimated that renovation. You've got a property that was built 45 years ago and has been neglected for 15 years. When you start peeling back the layers of the onion, you find stuff that you never anticipated. And we didn't leave a big enough contingency fund in our renovation to cover all of it.
I see.
In addition to that, despite the fact that we had a courtesy officer living there, despite the fact we had our own GC there, over the course of the first 18 months, I think we still suffered about $50,000 worth of vandalism.
Additional vandalism.
Additional vandalism. That was, those things were definitely educational.
Yeah, we've had to leave lights on, throw TVs in empty units. I mean, that's what you have to do sometimes when you're really in a tough neighborhood like that. And, you know, there's an element that's, these people are starving and they need to get money to live. And so they'll go in and tear stuff out. It's a tough situation. So you underestimated the renovations. And guys, those of you listening, this is not uncommon at all, because what you see on the surface is not necessarily everything that's going to happen. And that's why I highly recommend, if you're not really skilled at contracting, you bring somebody in that peels away that onion, that takes, in your due diligence, if you have to, you take a wall out, you agree to put the wall back if you have to, you do what you have to do to see what's really there, and bring in plumbers and electricians to evaluate the systems, bring in a contractor to evaluate the HVAC, because it's so easy to really misinterpret what's going to happen once you start doing the renovation. So good lesson. Okay. Anything else? Any other lessons on that seminars?
Yeah, and actually this one's not related to the property, but I would say that anyone that's looking to raise money. So we needed $1.2 million to take this thing down. And going into it, we had two investors that both said, yeah, we're good for 400 each. So going into this deal, they're like, wow, we've already got 800. We only need to raise 400. We can do that. That's not a problem. So we're under contract. We're about 30 days in. Both of those guys backed out.
Wow.
Yeah. It turns out one of them actually never even had the money. And the really sad thing is he had been a friend for 4 or 5 years. He never even had the money, and he actually eventually declared bankruptcy. And then the other guy, and this kind of gets into vetting your partners, turns out he had very different ideas about what the structure was going to be and what his role was going to be. He wanted to be like an even partner and running the thing, not an investor. And so that wasn't going to happen. So he backed out. So all of a sudden we went from thinking we had 1.2 million done down to, well, we've got a couple 100,000 and we need to close in about 45 days.
Wow. So
that was an extremely stressful time. So we reached out to everybody we knew and to, with the deal, and then also went back to the seller and said, truthfully, hey, you know what, this thing's in a little rougher shape than what you said after we did our due diligence.
Oh, sure. You've got a compelling reason to ask for an extension of time for sure.
Yeah,
when you've got a property that's that vacant.
Well, actually, part of our contract, and I do this in every contract. In fact, it's in my LOI because I want to do deals that stick. So I have in there that, hopefully we won't need this, but if an extension is needed, we do an additional deposit of $15,000 for 15,000 days.
For 15 days. 15 days. 15 grand for 15 days. And that's really smart. And by the way, those of you listening, if you don't know what an LOI is, in commercial real estate, and you'll hear me say, never write your own contract if you're buying commercial real estate, unless it's real small property. You always use an attorney. And because attorneys cost money, in the commercial real estate space, be it apartments, multifamily, office, retail, anything, you're going to use a letter of intent, and that's an LOI. And that letter of intent spells out all the major deal points on a deal. The price, when you're going to close, the due diligence period, if you're going to finance it, who's going to pay what stays with the property, what doesn't. All the major deal points you agree to in this letter of intent, and it's non-binding, but this commercial space is a small world. You don't want to be known as the person that BS's and just wastes other people's time. But you do this typically it's 1 to 2 to 3 page LOI, letter of intent. And that way you negotiate off the LOI and you agree on the major terms. Then you can spend the money to go write a contract. So I just wanted to explain that if there's a few real new people that don't know what that means. So you got your extension. I love that extra clause, 15 grand for 15 days, because guys, remember, that money isn't at risk until you exceed your due diligence period. So it's no skin off Andrew's nose to throw another 15,000 in escrow, because he knows if he backs out, he's going to get that back. So it's just basically giving yourself an extra 15 days, which is really smart. Anyway, sorry, I wanted to explain that. So I wanted to make sure they got that.
And then also we said, look, we're going to have to, due to the condition of it, we're going to have to raise a little more capital than we thought. So we got him to carry a note for a couple $100,000. Beautiful. And so that bridged the gap. We were able to get it closed. We continued to raise money. I think it took 6 months post-closing to finish it off. But we eventually did. And wow. When we bought it, it was collecting $8,000 a month. When we sold it, it was collecting $42,000 a month.
Look at that.
How
long did it take you to lease it up? Tell me if you did anything, because that's a big vacancy number, and you've got to pull out all the stops. Now, maybe you totally relied on your property management company. I don't know. Did you aid them at all? Was there any guerrilla marketing going on? Just talk about that for a minute. Yeah, we did all of that. I mean, we were on the usual rent.com and apartment guide, tons of bandit signs all around town. Mm-hmm. Our property manager, I think every Thursday she'd spend the day going and talking to businesses. We'd try to arrange deals with Pizza Hut. Hey, let us advertise, and then you can have exclusive delivery to our apartment complex. Nice.
Stuff like that. In the beginning, we we definitely welcome Section 8 and some of those type of things just to
No
get
kidding.
it,
Oh, wow.
well, to get
Okay.
it cash flowing and up and off the ground. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I think it probably took about 18 months to get it fully.
To get it full.
To get
Okay.
it up and over.
Did you set up a website with floor plans and videos of the units or any of that? I mean, did you do an online presence at all?
I mean, we weren't that sophisticated back then, frankly. We did have a website and it had pictures and all that, but it wasn't to the level where it is now, like where you've got floor plans and videos and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Okay. Awesome. So wow, that was quite an amazing first deal. So what's happened since then?
Well, since then, we've done 12 or 13 total, on average about 100 and something units. So that's 1,566 units so far.
Okay.
And my wife and I have been doing apartment complexes full time for, I guess, about the last 6 years now.
So what roles, let's talk about your team. Let's talk about the different roles in your team. So your wife's actually working alongside you. Very cool. And sometimes very risky, but obviously it's working in your situation.
Well,
if my wife and I work together, I adore my wife. I worship my wife, and she would probably cut me. So anyway.
Well, it's funny. Whenever I tell people that, a lot of times I get that kind of funny look, and they're like, "Oh, so how's that working for you?"
Right.
Actually, really well. So
no kidding. Well, that's awesome. I mean, that truly is awesome. But yeah, no, my wife would kill me. And anyway, so tell me what you do, what she does, and then what other members, what other people you have on your team. You've got a hell of a portfolio going. So talk about that.
So my wife is mostly I'm the forward-facing person. So most people would never interact with her. She's making sure all the insurance policies are in line and certain bills are paid, and kind of a lot of the really important back-end stuff that hopefully, if it's done right, no one ever sees or hears about.
Okay.
So my main role is acquisitions, dispositions, and asset management.
Okay.
And so for our team, each property has, and this is one of the reasons.
Okay, so because you're using third-party property management, you don't need to have as much of a team, correct?
Well, as far as the team on our payroll, correct. So I do have an office manager. She works full-time for us. And and then a virtual assistant, but they are the only direct employees. Everyone else is effectively independent or through the third-party management.
Paid via the property. Okay.
Exactly. Yep.
All right. And so what is your office manager? I mean, what's her role? What would you need one for?
She does a lot of things. So, I mean, we've got a large pool of investors, and there's a lot of...
so investor relations stuff.
Yeah, so it's like, oh, hey, I lost my K1. Could you send another copy?
Got it.
Stuff like that. Yeah.
Got it. And use a VA, which I love VAs. I've got, right now we have 5 in the Philippines at $1.93 an hour each. I mean, $10 an hour. I've got 5 people working full time. So guys, that is an awesome way to maximize what you're doing. But is your VA local, or are they offshore as well?
No, probably a neighbor to one of yours. They're
no kidding.
In the Philippines. Yep.
Awesome. Yeah. So what do you use your VA for?
We found a lot of the repetitive stuff that's easy to make. What we do is, once we identify a task as something that's easily repeatable, we basically record ourselves doing it on the computer, shoot a quick video, hand it off to the VA, and then say, okay, this is something that you can do. And as long as it's something that it's not, high level where you need right away, that seems to work well. No,
they're fantastic for that. There's a little bit of an art to hiring them. Let me spend 2 minutes talking about it. We go into it in depth in my course as well, but basically you have to test them. The resumes are irrelevant. But you can go to the Philippine Craigslist. Believe it or not, there's a Craigslist there, and you can run an ad and you have people respond, and then you put them through a series of tests. So usually an easy test, which will filter out some of them, and then a tougher test. And then, like you said, Andrew, you have to train them very, very well. And of course, you're going to talk to them early in the morning or late at night, because they're almost exactly opposite our time. If you screen share what you want them to do and you take the time to train them, I mean, they can take so much load off you, but you have to manage them. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say, and I'm not trying to be derogatory, but as it relates to that particular segment of virtual assistants, you want to direct them. Don't give them a lot of autonomy, but they work very, very well. They say, I mean, they're honing our mailing list and they improving our mailing list so we can find off-market deals. And they've been a godsend. So highly recommend them. So that's your team. What about team members that you rely on for counsel? Attorneys, obviously you've probably got a great broker network. What other components do you have on your team that people should, relationships that people should build to maximize this business?
You mentioned a couple of them, and so there's a short list of obvious ones: for good property managers, good attorneys, good brokers, good contractors, and all of those. I would say one that maybe isn't quite as obvious that is just as crucial is a good peer group and a mastermind. So I'm in a mastermind called GoBundance, which is...
Oh, love that group. That's a great group. In fact, two very, very good friends are in it. Do you know Rock Thomas or Pat Hyben?
Oh, yeah. Pat Hyben's we've been investing together for like 7 or 8 years now.
There you go. It's a small world. Guys, this world truly is small. There's like 1 degree of separation. I know. Were you on the Vietnam trip?
I wasn't on that trip. I was on the Norway and the Austria trip.
All right. They've been trying to get me in that, and I really, if I had enough bandwidth, I would definitely join that group. So the shout out to GoBundance. It is a great group, and shout out in general to Masterminding. I mean, if you read Think and Grow Rich, by God, it's right there in that book. Think and Grow Rich talks about the power of Mastermind. I'm in 3 masterminds. They're each $25,000. So that's how much I value masterminds. Okay. They're very, very powerful. You've heard me talk about, if you've listened to my Driving Force Success tips, you are the 5 people you hang around. So round up. You truly are who you hang out with. You make the money at the level of your peer group. You grow to the level of your peer group. You contribute to the level of your peer group, which is one of the things I know GoBundance does. They have a contribution component, correct?
Mm-hmm, definitely.
Yeah. And that's just huge. I was in Tony Robbins' mastermind. Hell, that was like 100 and some thousand when you factor, I think it was about 120 grand when you factor in the travel costs and everything. This platinum group, and they give a bunch to charity, and they build schools and everything. And it's a great way to level up. Agreed?
Oh, absolutely. Wouldn't be here without it.
Yeah. I'm really glad you brought that up.
So I've got the mastermind groups, and it's kind of like almost having your own little board of directors, right?
Yeah.
So, I have access to those guys who, they may not necessarily be multifamily guys, but they're still experienced, seasoned entrepreneurs. And then getting very specific to the multifamily, over the years, I've made a point to go to industry events and just network with other owners. And so that if I've got a problem or something unexpected, or I just want an opinion on something, I've got a long list of people that I can call and say, hey, have you run into this before? And if you did, how did you solve it? Right?
Brilliant.
That's one of the beauties of real estate is you can practice. You don't have to be that creative. You can practice R&D, rip off and duplicate. So there's almost nothing new.
No.
Right?
I like the word emulation. Okay. Yeah. There's nothing new in this world. It's all been said before, done before, thought about before. It's just a new spin on the same stuff. And no, I totally agree. And I want to go back to something you just said. And you were talking about your mastermind, how it doesn't matter what a person's business actually is. He's going to be able to add value to someone in a different business entirely. In fact, one of the greatest marketers in the world, a guy named Jay Abraham, I was lucky enough to get a picture with him and mastermind. He was in one of the masterminds I was in just recently. And this is a guy that the reason he's a brilliant marketer is because he's worked in so many different businesses that he cross-pollinates different strategies from just different vertical markets in business. And so the incredible dynamic of having, like, say, a group of 10 people that are from different businesses giving you feedback on your business, you come up with ideas that you would have never thought about because in your business, it's just not done. So you get feedback that can really maximize what you're doing that other people in your industry haven't done, particularly in marketing, sales, even operations. So anyway, I just wanted to hammer that point home, the value. If you guys have an opportunity to join a mastermind, highly recommend it. It really is life-changing in most circumstances. So what's next for you? I know you said you had an 80 unit under contract before we started recording. Where's that located?
That's also out in Georgia.
Okay.
Kind of where we're concentrated. And actually, it was in a spot that we don't even really look that hard, but it was an off-market property that a broker brought to us. And, it just so happens it's a couple miles down the road from an existing property that we have.
Oh, perfect.
And we got a great price on it. And we're going to be able to wrap the management of the new property in with the one that we currently have. That's just kicking butt right there. And so we can run it probably far more efficiently than most other people can be, partly because of that. And we've been in that market for 6 years. Right. So it's just going to be it's only 80 units. It's on the smaller side for us, but it's just going to be a really good little cash flow deal.
Okay. And so what class of property do you target, and what type of areas do you prefer?
We generally target B- properties that we can bring up to B level, or even a C+ that we can bring to a B- or B. And we actually have in fact, this is one of the things the VA does now, is we have a very specific procedure for screening the area and the demographics that we want.
Let's talk about that if you don't mind. I'd love to hear. I'd love to hear what it is. I mean, we always look at income, population, employment, diversity of employment, job growth, income growth, population growth, all those things that you look for. But I'd love to hear your take on if you've got a formula.
We do, and to the listeners, the numbers I'm gonna give. I'll tell you what our actual numbers are, but they will vary depending on what market you're in and what your goals are. This is just what works well for us.
Sure.
So we are looking for a C+ to B- property in an area where the median income is at least $35,000. Mm-hmm. We found that once you start dropping into the 20s or lower, you're going to be dealing with some extra headaches. Right? It's just how it goes. So we're looking for 35 and up. We want to see the poverty level to be below 15%, ideally single digits, but definitely below 15%. Okay. We do not want to be in a flood zone. We've just found it's not worth the headache and the expense.
Extra expense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to pay, by the way, guys, those of you listening, if you're in a flood zone, the insurance can be astronomical. And you don't want obviously there's an element of risk. Although I think some of the flood zones are a little exaggerated, but I avoid them as well. Please continue.
Yeah, and then we check crime. So on the very surface level, it's easy. We just go to Trulia and they have these great crime maps. They're all color coded and all that. And if it's green, we're good. If it's not green, we're probably out. And then, during due diligence, we'll actually contact the police department and dig really deep. But, this is our early screening. And then in addition to that, we use
spot crime, but Trulia is awesome. That's a great tip for the group. Awesome.
Yeah, there's crimemapper.com. There's a bunch of them out there that work really well.
Super. And what he just said, I want to hammer home as well. If you're in final due diligence on a property, you better have talked to the police department to find out what's happened historically. If there's problem units, you better have talked to the assessor's office to find out if there've been, what the taxes are going to go up to. You better have talked to zoning to find out if there've been a lot of violations on the property. So, these are all things that you're going to do when you're in your final due diligence. You're out there talking to people about this property. You're talking to tenants. Anyway, please continue. Sorry.
Yeah, no. And then, we also look at population growth, job growth. And, you actually kind of just mentioned something really important when you were talking just a second ago of the diversity of the job base. So, I've seen some great properties in great little towns and everything seems great, but you know what? 50% of the population works for one company.
Yeah, it works for one employer. Yep, I've seen it.
I remember a broker one time was like, "Oh yeah, the plant's right next door, and 65% of the tenants work for the plant." I'm like, "I'm done. I'm out." Because if that plant shuts down,
you're screwed. Home. I mean, you're done. You're decimated. And in fact, I talk about Belleville, Illinois. There were some great deals up there. It's my wife's hometown. And we got all excited about these deals. And then there's a huge base there. Now, chances are that base isn't going away from what I've heard since I've been up there. But Trump's probably not going to let any of them go. And we're not going to go down that rabbit hole. But at some point, they're likely to shut some of these bases. And when that happens, I mean, that economy goes in a tailspin. Yeah, it could ultimately recover, probably will, but you don't want to be on the tail end of that.
No,
and
we avoid military as well.
Yeah. Okay. So there you go. What else? Anything else on that?
That's our pre-screening. Once we're under contract, we dig much, much deeper on all of
Well,
those.
you heard me talk about some of the offices that we visit. What did I miss? Anything else you can add to that? Once you've got a property under contract, obviously you're going to inspect it. You're going to go through every unit. You're going to video. You're going to take pictures. You're going to bring contractors. If there's any question about any of the mechanical, you're going to bring an HVAC person. If there's any chance that there could be concrete foundational issues, you're going to bring the right inspectors for anything you encounter. What else do you do when you're in your heavy due diligence that you might add?
Yeah, the physical part's only half of it.
Right.
So, the other piece is all the financial.
Yeah.
So
right.
We do a full lease audit, which means we bring in a team. They sit down and they literally read through every single
lease. Yeah. Does your property management company help with that? Because
yes,
usually
they do.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Typically, that's one of the things they do. They'll help you with all that piece. Go through all the leases. That's great. Okay.
Yeah. And so what they'll do is they'll compare and they'll build a spreadsheet and everything, and we'll compare the actual leases versus what's been reported on the rent roll.
Right.
And then see what, I mean, there's always going to be some little mistakes and differences, but, and they'll be able to report, and we'll be able to look, say, are there material differences between the rent roll and what's actually on the leases? And if there is, why? Is it intentional? Is it just poor management from a mom and pop? And, depending on what the answer is, depends on whether or not it's a problem.
Right. Or you're going to retrade, and have you had to retrade deals?
Fortunately, with the exception of that first one, there's only one other one that we had to retrade.
Right.
And what happened is it turns out that we found out that they had two sets of books. And how we found that out is they were reporting a certain amount of utility billing on their trailing 12, so their monthly financials. Right. And what we did is we went to the utilities and requested a year's worth of actual bills. And the sellers were reporting to us $50,000 less in annual utilities than what the actual billing was.
Wow. So the guys, that's a clue. Get copies of the utility bills for the last year. That's
Absolutely.
one of the things you should do every time. Wow. And of course, for those of you who don't know, retrade means renegotiate. And typically you've done enough of your homework up front so you don't have to do that. And you don't want to be known as the person that always does that when you go in and buy a property. And that's why I asked the question. But if you find a material misrepresentation, something that wasn't disclosed, or your due diligence finds something that maybe even the seller didn't know about, by all means, you go in and renegotiate it. Okay. Awesome. So what else do I want to ask you? What haven't I asked you? What else? What other value can you add? This has been a really great episode.
Let's see. So we talked about the utility bills. We talked.
Oh, that's right. And the due diligence. What else? What else in the due diligence?
We also we make sure we get the actual tax assessments. We will go down to City Hall and Chamber of Commerce, and this one has just been a gold mine in some cases. In fact, particularly a deal we closed last fall. I don't know if the seller realized just how much good stuff was going on. I went down and literally just walked into City Hall and said, "Can I meet with the city planner?" And they kind of looked at me funny, like, what are you talking? And so I walk into his office, and on the wall, he's got this 6-foot beautiful color map of the town, and all these parcels color coded, and all these pins and things. I'm like, so what is all this? For 45 minutes, he went through and said, this is going in here, and this is going in here, and there's like $750, $300,000 single family homes going in here, and then here's the new Walmart, here's the new hospital, here's the new Kroger. I'm like, oh wow, this is, that doesn't get any better than this. And so I said, so he gave me a copy of all this stuff, and I mean, it was just
wow. And
stuff like that. We will actually, in most cases, we will try to meet with the
Chamber of Commerce, right?
Chamber, and then also the
they have an economic development office, maybe. If they have one of those, you should probably meet with them, right?
So yeah, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it depends on the town. Sometimes they're not all that coordinated, but
right. But definitely city planning. Find out what's going on. Maybe there's a highway that's going to go right next to your property, which could be a good thing or a bad thing. But sometimes they throw raw meat in and they don't get out much, and they love it when people come talk to them. And in fact, I was just talking about this on my coaching call yesterday, where you've got to call the chamber and find out what's going on, and get into City Hall and find out what's happening, because it could be bad too. You never know. There could be some negative stuff going on, big employers leaving or problems. But sometimes it's a wealth of good knowledge that you got on that deal last fall, you said. So awesome. I'm really glad you brought that up.
And another one too is during due diligence, we go and we go to the local police station and try to meet with the captain and say, hey, look, here's what we're doing. We like to run clean properties, keep everybody above the law. Or not, that's not the right term, but keep it clean. And we actually will uphold the rules. We don't tolerate drug dealing, none of that stuff, and make it very clear to the police that we are here to partner with them.
Right.
And we will do anything we can to make their lives easier as far as cleaning up our property. So we say, look, we'll install video. We'll create a substation where your guys can come have snacks and do paperwork on our property. And if we will enforce the rules and just get off on the right foot with the police department in the beginning. And that seems to go a long ways too.
I totally agree. And I'll add, and that's fantastic. Thank you. And I'll add something else. I recommend you go to the department that handles zoning violations and health complaints and things of that nature, and go meet those people as well and say the same thing. Okay, because they can make your life hell. Okay.
Oh yeah.
You go make nice with them and say, listen, we want to run a clean property. If you have a complaint about something, please call me directly. We will get on it immediately, because, again, that's just preventive maintenance. That's pre-framing, because they truly can make your life hell if they get you with a violation and you have to bring things to code that you wouldn't have to do normally. That's another highly recommended thing you do. Well, listen, Andrew, it has been awesome, my friend. You've added a ton of value, and I've really enjoyed this episode. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you wish I had?
Yeah, I've heard you ask the question before. If you could go back to the beginning.
And tell your previous self what you would do differently. What would you tell? Yeah, what would you tell your younger self?
Yeah. Well, so my first thought was I'd say, hey, forget this whole real estate thing, because in 9 years you're going to invent time travel and make way more money off of that, right? But no, I would just say get into real estate right away. It took how many years for us to figure out that real estate was it. It's definitely not a regret, but we would probably be even further along if we had figured out the power of for both just for passive income and for wealth building of real estate. And, I've talked to people, I can't believe you started in the crash or this market. There's almost never a bad market. There's just a bad strategy. Right. So
no, you're right. I mean, we're heading into a contraction, and there are strategies to make a ton of money right now, but you have to go in with both eyes wide open and be paying attention to the right things, not value. Value is irrelevant right now. It's totally based on cash flow and your ability to cover the debt service coverage ratio. And that's really what you need to be buying on right now.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Rod.
No, please continue.
I would say, most of our debt service ratios at this point are like 2.5 to 3.
Yeah. See, that's fantastic. And I don't buy unless I can. Right now, I won't buy anything unless it's a 1.6 or the ability to get there quickly. But those are fantastic. No, that's great. Let me ask you one last question. What books do you gift the most to people? Everyone's read Rich Dad Poor Dad, sure. and that was just a groundbreaking book for so many people. One of my favorites that I probably reread more than any others is the old How to Win Friends and Influence People. Fantastic book.
Because as much as real estate is about numbers, when it really comes down to it, it's people. Your relationship with the seller, with the broker, with your contractor, with the banker. With the county inspector, like you were talking about. Yep.
County inspector. Yeah. No, that's awesome. Well, thanks so much, Andrew. And we'll have his contact information in the show notes. His website is vpacq.com. Andrew, thanks for being on the show, buddy.
Hey, you're welcome. I really enjoyed it, Rod. Take care.
Likewise.
Thank you for listening to the Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing podcast. If you've enjoyed the show, please subscribe. And then take a moment to visit iTunes and leave a 5-star rating and review. For more resources to connect with us further, please visit our website at lifetimecashflowpodcast.com. Tune in next week for our next show.